Judges, chapter 1. And it comes to pass after the death of Joshua that the sons of Israel ask of Yahweh, saying, Who goes up for us to the Canaanite at the commandment to fight against it? And Yahweh says, Judah goes up. Behold, I have given the land into his hand. And Judah says to his brother Simeon, Go up with me into my lot, and we fight against the Canaanite. And I have gone, even I, with you, into your lot. And Simeon goes with him. And Judah goes up, and Yahweh gives the Canaanite and the Perizzite into their hand, and they strike them in Bezek, 10,000 men. And they find Adoni-Bezek in Bezek, and fight against him, and strike the Canaanite and the Perizzite. And Adoni-Bezek flees, and they pursue after him, and seize him, and cut off his thumbs and his great toes. And Adoni-Bezek says, 70 kings, their thumbs and their great toes cut off, have been gathering under my table. As I have done, so God has repaid to me. And they bring him to Jerusalem, and he dies there. And the sons of Judah fight against Jerusalem, and capture it, and strike it by the mouth of the sword, and they have sent the city into fire. And afterward the sons of Judah have gone down to fight against the Canaanite, inhabiting the hill country, and the south, and the low country. And Judah goes to the Canaanite who is dwelling in Hebron, and the name of Hebron was formerly Kirjath-Arba, and they strike Sheshai, and Ahiman, and Talmai. And he goes there to the inhabitants of Debir, and the name of Debir was formerly Kirjath-Sepher. And Caleb says, He who strikes Kirjath-Sepher and has captured it, then I have given my daughter Achsah to him for a wife. And Othniel, son of Kenaz, younger brother of Caleb, captures it, and he gives his daughter Achsah to him for a wife. And it comes to pass in her coming in that she persuades him to ask from her father the field. And she comes down off the donkey, and Caleb says to her, What do you want? And she says to him, Give a blessing to me. When you have given me the south land, then you have given springs of water to me. And Caleb gives the upper springs and the lower springs to her. And the sons of the Kenite, father-in-law of Moses, have gone up out of the city of palms with the sons of Judah to the wilderness of Judah, which is in the south of Arad, and they go and dwell with the people. And Judah goes with his brother Simeon, and they strike the Canaanite inhabiting Zephath, and devote it, and one calls the name of the city Hormah. And Judah captures Gaza and its border, and Askelon and its border, and Ekron and its border. And Yahweh is with Judah, and he occupies the hill country, but not to dispossess the inhabitants of the valley, for they have chariots of iron. And they give Hebron to Caleb, as Moses has spoken, and he dispossesses the 3 sons of Anak there. And the sons of Benjamin have not dispossessed the Jebusite inhabiting Jerusalem, and the Jebusite dwells with the sons of Benjamin in Jerusalem until this day. And the house of Joseph goes up, even they, to Beth-El, and Yahweh is with them. And the house of Joseph causes men to spy out Beth-El, and the name of the city was formerly Luz. And the watchers see a man coming out from the city, and say to him, Please, show us the entrance of the city, and we have done kindness with you. And he shows them the entrance of the city, and they strike the city by the mouth of the sword, and they have sent the man and all his family away. And the man goes to the land of the Hittites, and builds a city, and calls its name Luz. It is its name to this day. And Manasseh has not occupied Beth-Shean and its towns, and Tanakh and its towns, and the inhabitants of Dor and its towns, and the inhabitants of Iblaim and its towns, and the inhabitants of Megiddo and its towns. And the Canaanite is desirous to dwell in that land. And it comes to pass, when Israel has been strong, that he sets the Canaanite to forced labor, and has not utterly dispossessed it. And Ephraim has not dispossessed the Canaanite who is dwelling in Gezer, and the Canaanite dwells in its midst, in Gezer. Zebulun has not dispossessed the inhabitants of Kitron, and the inhabitants of Nahalol, and the Canaanite dwells in its midst, and they become forced labor. Asher has not dispossessed the inhabitants of Akko, and the inhabitants of Sidon, and Elab, and Achzib, and Helba, and Aphik, and Rehob. And the Asherite dwells in the midst of the Canaanite, the inhabitants of the land. for it has not dispossessed them. Naphtali has not dispossessed the inhabitants of Beth-Shemesh and the inhabitants of Beth-Anath, and he dwells in the midst of the Canaanite, the inhabitants of the land. And the inhabitants of Beth-Shemesh and Beth-Anath were forced labor for them. And the Amorites pressed the sons of Dan to the mountain, for they have not permitted them to go down to the valley. And the Amorite is desirous to dwell in Mount Heres, in Ajalon, and in Shalbim, and the house of Joseph is heavy, and they are forced labor. And the border of the Amorite is from the ascent of Akrabim, from the rock upward.